Hi everyone, it's Lucy Wager and Amy Wilkinson from Oh for Food's Sake podcast. We are here talking to you every day on the run up to our third masterclass, which is all about building your network. So today, Amy is going to share her story of why her network was her saviour.
Yeah, so it's been a saviour a couple of times, really. So for listeners of the podcast, you'll already know a bit of my backstory, but I'll give you a very brief overview. I can talk about this for hours, can't I? Because it was quite a big event that happened to me about 10, 11 years ago now, working as a senior commercial manager in the food industry. I well and truly burnt out. And when I say I burnt out, I mean physically and mentally. I was unable to move. I was bedbound for a few weeks and it took me years to recover. But I did recover. And part of what helped me to recover was my network. So, the business that I was in at the time, I had networked quite well within that business and was well known across various sites. The business was very supportive of me at that time. But I quickly decided that I needed to move on from that business because anybody that's experienced that kind of burnout, you're holding on to this shame and feeling like everybody's judging you, even though they're probably not. And actually now when I look back, and some of the people that were in my network there are still not my biggest supporters now. So they absolutely were not thinking those things of me, but they're part of the lessons that I've learned. And actually, if I had lent on that support network more that I had within that business and the businesses around me, the customers I was working with, I may not have ended up in that burnout state. But hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But where my network really came into its own was in the recovery from burnout, when I then moved on to another business. One example is when I still had quite a lot of chronic conditions and I got a lot of fatigue for a lot of years as a result of that. But because I had a strong network, because I'd stayed in touch with my network, because I went back to a business that I'd worked in previously, when I went for the interview, it was a completely different department, it was a completely different part of the business. It was a big business. My reputation preceded me. And there were people that were in quite senior positions now that I'd worked with when I'd been in more junior roles, that I'd stayed in touch with lightly. So they knew what had happened, but they still knew that I was really good at what I did. And when I went for the interview, I can remember sort of having to have the conversation. So this would have been about 8 years ago, when flexible working wasn't really a thing and working from home wasn't a thing, but I needed those things. I needed to be able to work from home one day a week. I needed to be able to leave work at 5 o'clock every day, which is unusual in the food industry, isn't it? For my health. But I was able to have that conversation at interview stage because I had that network behind me, the other people that I had worked with previously, that I'd stayed in contact with, that could vouch for me. Even though I was going into a new department, people didn't know me. They knew that I was going to be really good at what I did because I'd managed to stay in contact with them. So that's kind of one point where I can really see that really helped. And actually moving back into that business, I had stayed in touch with people across lots of different functions, and that really helped me return into the business because I'd been gone 7 years. But it's amazing how little changes in that time. But I knew, I still knew a lot of people across that business, which was really helpful to me.
And there's something about sort of sharing parts of yourself with your network, isn't there? In helping of building your network and nurturing it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit about that vulnerability, because part of the reason that I burnt out in the first place was because I was very closed and didn't really make that much effort to make friends and influence in the right way in that business that I'd been in. And that was part of the reason I wanted to get out, because I was like, oh, now they all know my personal life and all of that sort of stuff. But then when I went to this other business, I was I was a bit guarded to start with, but then when I actually started to get a bit more vulnerable, tell people my backstory, and actually it's amazing when you actually show that little piece of you, that really helps to build your network, because people remember you as a human being and not somebody that, you know, just
Machine.
does the presentations kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's one example. I've got other examples which I will share in the masterclass itself, because it's definitely, I mean, that's in my employed life. Since I've been self-employed, my network, it's all been about my network. But we haven't got time to talk about that today.
No.
So come and join the masterclass on Wednesday, the 28th at 12:30. If you can't make it live, you'll get a recording and the slides sent to you within 24 hours. We would absolutely love to see you there.